So I guess it wouldn't be Trinity Sunday if I didn't start off by telling you all a little love story. Because if the Trinity is anything, it is love. And what is a love story without a little mystery, maybe a dance or two, and perhaps most wonderfully in the end, union? A while back, I had a friend who fell head over heels with a math major. I feel like I need to state that right up front because there was a small little bit, the fact really, that part of my friend's intellect resided in a completely different hemisphere of the brain that did his sweetheart's, especially when it came to discussing matters of the universal language. You should have seen him one night. He asked her to show him what she was working on. Giddy with excitement, she began to write down a very complex equation on her napkin, looking up occasionally to see if he was still interested. I assure you that he was, though to his dismay, when she placed the napkin in front of him with letters in the equation rather than numbers, he knew immediately that she was out of his league, or he was out of her league, But love has a funny way of making the crooked places straight in our lives and a long shot seem possible. And so he asked her, "How do you do that?" And ever since, he has been listening how. It's funny what you hear sometimes when you aren't expecting the answer you get. For instance, before the incident with the math equation took place, my friend would place old poems out of his dad's collection of Rupert Brooke and leave them under his sweetheart's windshield wiper before he went into school. After he had worked through the previously mentioned author's collected works, he finally got the courage to approach her. It only took 2 months. Record time for him, as he had saved the best poem for last. As you probably can tell, my friend is one of the smoothest guys I know. Never mind the 2 lockers that he ran into following her out to the car that day. Luckily, she was talking with a friend and didn't really notice his tragic attempt at playing it cool. As they reached the parking lot, my friend froze as she turned around and walked straight towards him. As you can imagine, absolute panic set in. Then the formal greeting happened between 2 adolescent souls. I think I can redo it. Hi. 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 Somewhat like that. My friend knew it was now or never for him, and so mustering as much courage as he could, he tried his best, blurting out the only thing that was on his mind. "Who are you going to the homecoming dance with?" And as soon as the question left his lips, he thought, "Nice one, Casanova." But then something amazing happened. "You," she said. And I assure you that he wasn't expecting that, nor was he expecting what happened next. As he walked her to her car, he was working out a way to explain all of the notes that he had left to her in secret. But when they arrived at the car, the note wasn't there. As you might expect, another thing that my friend is known for is how gracefully he pivots. And just as he was preparing to do, her friend came back bearing the note that looked strangely like the one that he had folded that morning. "Another one," she smiled as she handed the note back to its intended recipient. Offering thanks, she looked at him and pointed, "Just so you know, this is my car." Just as she did that, her friend drove off in an identical Grand Am. Go figure. Poor guy had been leaving those poems on the wrong girl's car all along. Blushing doesn't quite describe the experience, but no matter, the dance was on. As you might have guessed, that dance turned into a lifetime of staying in step with each other, of figuring out how grace works and having the courage to give it to one another and the humility to receive it when necessary. And that isn't easy, my friends. But then again, isn't that what is at work in the divine dance? And if there, then in us? Isn't that what is at work in a union that becomes a sign for us of love in our broken world? Where surely the work of the Trinity in and amongst us remains one of unity overcoming estrangement, of forgiveness healing guilt, and of joy conquering despair? Perhaps, especially if you believe that love is the only answer. On a day where most sermons will start off with a joke on how to pass the homily off to some unexpecting soul, because what is expected in that moment is an explanation rather than an understanding, I hope we can circle back around to the dance that has been ever before us and see it at work in our lives and especially in those we love. I hope we can circle back around to the love story that has been going on since God slung a universe into being, before taking us as his own, before giving us the gift of his Spirit, and an invitation to have a seat at the table, not as a stranger or a guest, but as the hymn says, and as the icon on the front of your cover suggests, like a child at home. I hope that in that moment, when the mystery of what was, what is, and what is to come, when that is placed before us, we lean not on our own understanding, but God's, and the fact that the mystery of the Trinity is not something that you cannot understand, but something that you can endlessly understand, because it is all around us, and most importantly, in us. For the Trinity is what remains constant. It remains at work, taking shape, coming close, transforming us, leading us, loving us, until at last we can see it in the people around us, until at last we can see it in our own relationships, the Godhead speaking to us in our own story, at work in our life together, at work in our prayer, which, as we have learned, is God at work in us. And if God is at work in us, then the dance has already begun.